Here's the thing. Birds are real, and it's mean to say that they're not. Welcome back to the Birds Are Real podcast. This is episode 2. Thank you all for your support on episode 1. We peaked at number 38 in the nature category on Apple Podcasts. Don't ask me out of how many. We'd like to think maybe like 5K, 10K.
10K, yeah, 15K.
I think that's a reasonable number.
Stiff competition, and we really
there.
pulled it out there.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for your support.
Yeah, and also thank you to everyone who sent in questions via email. We asked for questions. You all delivered. We got a lot of really great ones, and we are planning on getting to them at some point. We're getting to 2 of them today. In case you weren't here for episode 1, here's kind of the structure of how we do things. We like to start with a check-in question or 2, where we just get questions from the listeners via email and answer them. Not too in-depth of a discussion, just kind of to warm up, get you all ready for the rest of the episode. And then we'll dive into our main topic. We're going to switch off each episode who leads the main topic. This time it's going to be Kesh. And after that, we end with our fun little game where we each bring a bird call for the other one to try and guess what it is. We're going to keep a running score throughout the season.
The season, yeah.
At the end of the season, whoever wins... we'll come up with a prize. Maybe you guys can come up with a prize. Right now, score is 1-0 Kesh.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the season it stays 1-0 and we just don't get any right from here on out. But
if you do better than us, keep it to yourself. I don't care.
Yeah. Definitely encouraged to play at home. And let us know in the emails if you're blowing us out of the water.
Yeah.
Happy to hear.
By the way, if anyone has a better name for our various sections, especially the check-in question. It's a pretty generic name.
Yeah, I mean, it gets the job done, but it's not super creative. So if anyone has, a better idea for the check-in question or the name of the check-in question, let us know.
Early bird special, something better than that. But that's kind of the vein we're going for, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So yeah, let's get started with the check-in questions. Our first check-in question asked to us by Anonymous. They specified in the email that they wanted to be anonymous.
Yeah. We don't dox on this podcast.
Yeah. So otherwise, we will just say your first name, as you will see with the next person. But yeah, how does one get into birding? It's a good question.
It is a good question. And luckily, birding is one of the easiest things to get into. Mm-hmm. Literally, if you go outside and you see a bird in the sky, you recognize, oh, this is a bird. This is not a plane. This is not a kite, unless it's a bird called a kite. It's not a balloon.
Congrats, you're birding.
Congrats. Yeah, way to go.
There you go.
Claps for you.
Yeah, but Sam's right. Like, honestly, you can bird from the comfort of your own home. If you have a window, you see a bird outside, and you're like, yo, there's a bird. You're birding. I know last episode we were talking about, some of the gear that we use, our cameras, lenses. We were mentioning, the more advanced people were using spotting scopes, stuff like that. None of that is required. Of course, it maybe helps you get a little more immersed into the experience, but people sit in their local park and look at birds, and that's birding. You don't even have to look at them. You can close your eyes and listen to them. That's birding too.
That is. And yeah, if you think maybe you want to get some gear, like we were talking about, binoculars, I would start by just going somewhere where you expect there to be a lot of birds. There's probably someone there with binoculars looking at birds. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times birders are really happy to share, to tell you about the birds they're seeing, to let you know if there's something cool going on. Mm-hmm. And they'll let you look through the binoculars. If you really like that, there's some cheap binoculars out there. You don't have to go get $500 binoculars.
Yeah.
And if you decide, that doesn't enhance my experience too much, just keep going without binoculars.
Yeah, and I think John Hines, where we typically go birding, I think their visitor center hands out binoculars. So, mm-hmm. I'm sure there's a lot of places you can go try them before you even buy them. Probably recommend an 8 times magnification to a 10 times magnification for a beginner.
Yeah.
Just because it's hard to track birds that are a little faster with higher magnifications.
Yeah.
But it's really easy to get into birding. Yeah, a lot of avenues.
If you want something a little more structured than us just saying walk outside, walk around a park, there are a lot of nature centers. There are a lot of state parks, wildlife refuges all across the country, and I think all across many countries. If you're listening from outside the United States, shout out to all of you. And a lot of times they will have something like a visitor's center or information online. Speaking of online, Discord's been huge.
Yeah, there's a huge birding community out there. Of course, there are a lot of solo birders. People like, honestly, sometimes I like going out by myself, just me and nature. But there's a huge community out there for birding. We're both in this Discord for Pennsylvania in general,
statewide.
but there's specific channels for location. So we're in the Philadelphia channel. There's like Northeast Northeast Pennsylvania. And I'm sure each state has one. At least your region, local region has one. And it was a little intimidating at first because everyone there is super knowledgeable. They're posting about, all this really in-depth stuff, but everyone's super welcoming and honestly pretty eager to help people out if you have any questions.
Yeah. Lurking in a Discord is perfectly acceptable, but if you want to talk. Just make sure you don't post anything in the rare bird alert channels.
Ooh,
they don't like it when you do that.
They're super particular about their rare bird. Not in like a bad way. They just like, I don't know, people have the alerts on for the rare bird alert channels, and someone who knows what they're talking about will post in the rare bird alert, and everyone will assemble trying to see this bird.
Yeah. The last thing I think we should mention if you're starting out birding is this app, the Merlin app.
Mm-hmm. Great app. Made by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. Definitely helped me get into birding as quickly as I did. I'm not sure if I, would have got into it as much or as quickly initially. Super, super helpful. They help you identify birds. That's what the app does basically, either by recording the bird calls that you hear around you when you're out in the woods or in the park or whatever, and it'll run it against a database of sounds that it has stored, and it will tell you the likely bird that is making that call.
Yeah, it does a really good job, and like real time too. It doesn't take 10 minutes to do it. So if you're walking around, you hear something in the moment, it'll tell you like 10 seconds later.
Yeah, it's super cool. App's free.
Yeah,
it's one of the more well-made apps out there.
No microtransactions,
no pop-up ads.
Yeah, really amazing app.
You can also keep a life list on there. A life list, if you don't know, is a list of birds that birders keep track of, the first time they see a specific bird. If you see a new bird, they call it a lifer. It's that's a lifer for me. It's something you'll hear a lot. But
yeah, it's really handy.
Cool. Our next check-in question, asked to us by Jax, is how did you guys decide on the birds on the podcast cover art?
Yep, this is a good question. By the way, this is also not doxing because nowhere was it specified in the email that they did not want us to use
if
their
Jax
name.
wanted to remain anonymous, that's on Jax for not letting us know.
Too late.
Bad.
Shout out Jax, though.
Yeah, Jax is cool.
That's a good question. I did create that cover art myself.
Snaps for Sam.
Yeah. Renaissance man over here. I can sit in front of a microphone and I can very shoddily use Photoshop to draw.
It's more than what I can do, so.
For me, I chose my bird. My bird is a Steller's jay. You may be thinking it's a blue jay. It's very close, but that one's called a Steller's jay. I was thinking about a blue jay. Growing up, blue jays were probably my favorite bird. They were the coolest bird I would see regularly outside my window. And, even as a kid, you see that bird and you can tell, oh, wow, that's something special, right? It's got the crest, it's got that blue color, all the nice markings. Blue's a pretty rare color to see in nature.
Yeah, it really is.
So I thought about going with that, but I am a New York Yankees fan, all my baseball fans out there, and the Toronto Blue Jays are in the division, so I just couldn't go with it. So instead,
makes sense.
I moved out to Colorado a couple years back, and one of the first birds that I saw there was this thing that looked a little bigger than a blue jay, but had this really nice blue to black gradient. Big gradient fan. And that's called a Steller's jay. And I gave it glasses because I do wear glasses.
Yeah, Steller's jay, super cool. Haven't seen one in real life. Would love to one day. The bird that I am on the podcast cover art is a killdeer. You might notice a running theme here, but I do like the killdeer because it's a very good bird in wingspan.
Yeah. Discard one egg, draw two cards.
It's so broken. One of the more overpowered cards. If you see a killdeer in your opening hand in a game of wingspan, you're having a good day.
Yep.
So yeah, thought killdeers were cool partially because of that. Did see a killdeer for the first time this summer at John Hines. Super cool. They make this very distinct squeak call. Yep. Honestly, they just look, I really just love their like orange eye ring. I just think it's the coolest thing.
So cool. Bright orange.
Mm-hmm.
Really sets them apart from the other peeps.
Yes. And yeah, honestly, if Elizabeth Hargrave, if you're somehow listening, if you see a spike in wingspan sales, cut us a check or something.
Sponsor us.
Yeah, we're really
we'll sell out.
Yeah, it's a great game.
Doesn't matter.
Thank you for the check-in questions today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so let's get to the main topic of discussion for today. So as I was thinking about something, to do an episode on, I wanted to think of something that's maybe a little more current and something that I don't really know too much about, but probably should. And I kind of landed on migration.
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 Nice.
Very complex,
Yeah.
as I found out. But yeah, fall migration is upon us here in the U.S.
It is.
And the birders we talked to, they're all super excited about migration and, tracking these birds and everything. So I was like, you know what? What's all the hubbub about? Let me look into it. So I knew what migration is in a general sense. Like, I know birds leave and then they come back at some point. But I feel like having a more deeper grasp on the whole concept would give us a better understanding of these birds and therefore, a better appreciation. Because, some things are like out of sight, out of mind. But knowing what these birds are doing, what they're going through throughout, sometimes there's very arduous migrations. I think it just, enhances, our perception of these birds.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, that's one of the best things about migration is seeing a lot of birds you don't normally see. Mm-hmm. In practice, I've really not taken advantage of migration before. I always mean to in the spring and the fall, and I kind of don't. So I'm missing out. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. Well, to start, Sam, tell me what you know about migration. What are your first memories of seeing a migration or, learning about migration in school?
Right. So, I mean, I know... Right, birds fly south for the winter, mm-hmm. Birds fly north for the summer, in the northern hemisphere at least. And I know that they make pit stops along the way. So that's when we'll see our painted buntings here. Mm-hmm. That's when we'll see kind of those cooler birds that don't normally hang around the northeast. I think one of the strongest memories I have was actually of geese migrating, which is kind of funny because, geese are everywhere year round. They're just all over the place, but I think they still migrate. Mm-hmm. So I just went out to a lake one day a couple years back, and I looked up, and I kid you not, 400 geese just flying across the sky, mm-hmm. Kind of endlessly, an endless line of geese flying. Very loud, but very cool.
Yeah, were these geese in a particular formation, would you say?
I would say perhaps a V formation.
Okay. I was hoping you would, mention the Canada geese and the V-shaped formation, because that is the standout memory for me learning about migration initially in school. I don't know, maybe it's just something that they mentioned once and it just stuck with me, or maybe they harped on it a lot. I'm not sure. But for some reason, I feel like it's maybe a New England thing, which is why I was wondering if you were going to bring it up, because you grew up in Connecticut, I grew up in Massachusetts. If you're listening and you're not from the Northeast, let us know if they really harp on Canada geese V formations.
Yeah, did you learn about the Revolutionary War and Canada geese? Because that's all I learned in school.
Yeah, for some reason, I don't know. I feel like it is important, but yeah, the V formation, very cool. It's more of one of the more obvious patterns, I guess, you mm-hmm. see in nature, and I'll get into it a little later as to why they do it.
Oh, that's good. I feel like I've had theories in my head. Mm-hmm. I don't think I actually know why they do it.
I feel like your theory's probably right, but let's just talk about it. Why not? Why do you think they do that?
Boy, well, maybe theory was the wrong word, but I do know. Is this true? That one side of the V is typically longer than the other?
Yes, I actually didn't know that until I started, looking into migration for this episode. That is a astute observation. I think it's primarily because, winds are never straight or perpendicular mm-hmm. or whatever. They're always swirling around. So that's kind of to align themselves with the wind, and usually it's not perfect. So right. they turn a little bit, yeah. But the reason that they're in the V is the leader kind of takes on the brunt of the air, so the rest of the birds have less air resistance, so they're a little more.
Oh, they're drafting.
They're drafting.
Wow,
yeah.
like
race cars.
Like race cars.
Yeah, and the leader changes, right? I think it's a common misconception that there's just this alpha Canada goose that's just I'm gonna take the lead here. But no, they switch off after the top one gets tired. They'll reassemble.
That's huge news. I would be terrified if there were alpha geese out there.
Yeah, I did just want to preface that this topic went a lot deeper than I thought. It has a lot more facets than I initially expected. Like, you can really get granular with the evolution, genetics, and, why some species migrate, why some species don't. So I'll try to touch on, everything that I thought was pretty cool, but just FYI, people study bird migration for their entire lives. And another thing that I learned while researching this topic is that we honestly don't know a lot and are learning more things all the time.
And we're not ornithologists, by the way.
Contrary to popular belief, I feel like a lot of people after episode 1 were just raving about our spectacular bird knowledge.
Yeah.
No, we don't know much. I mean, okay, maybe we do. I don't know.
We know a little.
we know some. Yeah, so let's get into it. Sam, tell me why you think birds migrate.
Well, the birds get cold and then they fly to where it's warmer. And then they get too hot and then they fly where it's cooler.
Yep, you got an episode done.
All right, turn it off.
So one thing I did learn is a lot of the factors are different for each species. I should be clear. A lot of species don't migrate. There are a lot of permanent residents that, just are able to find food, able to breed, and they stay in the same location. They don't all need to migrate. So we see cardinals in the winter.
Oh yeah.
We see robins all the time.
Robins all the time.
Yeah, so going back to why birds migrate, they migrate for food. A lot of the time, birds from the south come up into the north in the spring because there's an abundance of insects, more plants, seeds, that kind of thing. And then once it gets colder and those food sources start to die off, they'll go back to the south. For nesting or for breeding, a lot of birds have specific climates that they breed in that their offspring are more viable. One thing that I thought was really cool is that just genetic predisposition in some birds also contributes to their desire to migrate. So one thing I was looking up is some German researchers have coined the term, in English, migration restlessness, or I'm going to let the German minor.
Oh, yeah, I got a minor in German in college. Here we go. It's been 5 years. Zugenruhe,
which describes a bird's innate desire or urge to migrate. These researchers, they had white-crowned sparrows in captivity. They were thinking they were controlling food and resources and mating, so maybe these birds won't migrate. Maybe they won't have an urge to migrate. But at a certain time of the year when, wild birds are migrating, they also got restless in their cages and had an urge to migrate. I'm wondering if, light levels played a part in that, just because birds can tell how much daylight there is on a given day, or temperature, or a combination of these factors. But I think they were trying to show that for some birds there is a genetic predisposition. It's in their DNA evolutionarily for some species to be hey, I need to go, and maybe not for a specific reason, but I need to migrate. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like that's something I've heard, that a lot of birds, a lot of animals in general, I guess, but specifically birds, have these really specific internal clocks and internal compasses.
Great segue into the next point. I was going to ask, we just talked about why birds migrate. Do you know how they're able to tell where to go?
Yeah, I guess I'm not totally sure on that. I did just recently read a book about pigeons and doves and how amazing their sense of direction is. But I'm not really sure why. Yeah,
so jury's kind of still out. It could be bird specific, or it could be multifactorial for these birds. It still isn't fully understood why or how certain birds know where to go. It is theorized some birds can get compass information from the sun, the stars. Some say that sensing the Earth's magnetic field. I'm not actually sure how you would test that,
all right.
But that's a theory. They also just get positional information from the sun setting, seeing landmarks. For some species like homing pigeons, there's evidence that smell can even play a role.
Smell, wow. I feel like I always kind of forget that birds can smell. I guess they got nostrils in there.
Yeah. I actually, now that you're mentioning it, it just occurred to me. I guess I never really thought about birds smelling.
Yeah. Seems like more of a mammal thing.
So obviously we take it for granted now. We know birds migrate, but initially people were confused as to why birds were leaving, or they weren't even sure why they were leaving. Here's some history on how people were first describing bird migrations or observed bird migrations. Some of these are pretty funny. Aristotle thought American redstarts morphed into robins in the winter. He thought they went underground, changed into robins, and came back out.
Yeah, that sounds like Aristotle.
Yeah, I mean, to his credit, he noticed that, there's not redstarts anymore, and there are robins now.
Okay.
So what's a man to think logically that they transformed? There's a lot of stories of indigenous cultures around the world mentioning certain birds in stories, oral stories that are passed down that are like leaving in the winter, some birds that come back. I don't know how much I believe this next one, but apparently their German researchers found a white stork with a spear in it in Germany, but they said the spear was from African wood. So they were like, I guess the stork goes to Africa. I don't know.
With a spear in it.
With the spear in it. I'm not sure how it would survive that journey, but maybe it did. I don't know.
It's a metal stork.
Yeah, pretty cool stork. White stork, also quite a good bird.
Yeah, that's true.
Really good bird. Underrated.
Yeah, I like it.
So, of course, as people started to parse out, this redstart's not transforming into a robin. I see the redstarts leaving, and robin's coming. That makes more sense that they go somewhere else.
We're talking about European robins here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm assuming.
Because American robins aren't real robins.
It's true.
It's true. We'll get into that maybe a different episode.
We said that last episode.
I'm going to mention it every episode from here until then.
Yeah, so, as people started to figure out, sounds like these birds are leaving, I wonder where they're going, and then they're coming back. People started to try to figure out, hey, how do we track these birds? Or how do we, figure out where these birds are going? What do you think some of these early methods were? Or put yourself in a bird migration pioneer's mind.
Yeah.
What would you think is a good course of action?
So we're thinking about the year 100 BC.
Actually, I think the white stork German thing was 1800s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I guess you can't just slap a GPS on it. Huh?
No, that's probably not the first method that was used.
Yeah. Boy, I mean, I don't know. Did it have anything to do with bird banding?
Yeah, exactly. Bird banding, tags, but that kind of only gets you specific data points, right? Like let's say you're tagging a white stork in Germany, and then someone sees it with the tag in, I actually don't know the migration pattern of the white stork specifically, but let's say they see it in Kenya or something, and then they see it again in Germany. That's just 2 data points. We actually don't know what's going on in between that. It could be going to North America for all we know. Yeah. It's not.
You need a lot of pen pals.
You need a lot of data points, right? So later on, we get radio telemetry, where as more infrastructure is built, these tags are able to ping radio towers. So as the birds fly by, the radio tower will get a signal and be like, hey, and they use numbers to name these birds. A specific bird that I'll mention later on was just called E7, and it just did the longest E7. It did the longest nonstop migration. Birds with specific tags will ping different radio towers. So the radio tower will get that information, and we'll have more data points to be able to see where the migration takes these birds, because obviously most of the time it's not just a straight line. So the problem with some of these devices that send out radio signals is that they're heavy. So initially, eagles, larger birds like the white stork, stuff like that is being tracked. But if you wanted to track a yellow warbler, you can't really strap on a metal heavy device. I know hummingbirds weigh grams. I'm assuming warblers weigh ounces.
Yeah, this would be like me carrying around an anvil with me everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. So as technology improved, they came up with something called a light geolocator. And these are very light, very tiny. Kind of looks like a little backpack on the bird. They strap them to their back. They have little straps that go to their feet. It's kind of cute, honestly. What the light geolocators do is they take in information when there's light. So they're able to parse out how much light they're given, how the intensity at which the light they have is, and you can parse out latitude and longitude from the amount of light there is.
Whoa.
Which is kind of cool, right? Okay. The light geolocators were very innovative in teaching us a lot about songbird migration, because when's the last time you saw thousands of yellow warblers in the sky flying somewhere?
Never.
like never,
Yeah.
right? So the light geolocators actually helped researchers learn that a lot of songbird migration occurs during nighttime, because
Oh,
they'll see a pinpoint during the day somewhere, and then the next time they'll see a pinpoint, it's hundreds of miles away.
wow.
Meaning, you're not getting a lot of pinpoints during the day, so the migration must have happened overnight. So a lot of cool innovations in technology are giving us a lot more insight onto how different birds migrate.
Very cool.
Another cool way modern birders learn about migration and track bird migration is through these apps that we were mentioning earlier before, made by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, eBird specifically. Sam, tell us about eBird real quick.
Yeah, eBird. So similar to Merlin, although it's not really used for IDing birds. It's more used for if you see a bird and you know what kind of bird it is, you mark it off in real time. So you go on a walk, you start a session, and then every bird you see, you just click add to your list. I believe it then goes off to someone who reviews the birds, make sure that it makes sense for the time and place that you are, and then scientists use those as data points.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. It's very community based because anyone can post to eBird. They're like, hey, I just went on a birding walk and here are all the birds I saw. And I think for the most part it's unreviewed if it's like an expected species, but if it's a rare species or a species that's not been seen that time of year before or something, it does go to a reviewer. I actually met one of the reviewers for our local area. I guess I can't dox him. His name's Al. His name in my phone is Alberter.
Nice. Albert.
Alberter. But yeah, super knowledgeable. Basically, like if I say there's a mandarin duck at John Hines, it'll go to Alberter and he'll be like, are you sure?
Yeah.
He'll be like, do you have a photo? What did it look like? That kind of thing. And I guess it's up to them whether they
They believe you.
or I think that what they try to do is help you with the ID. They're like, oh, did it have this type of bill? How big was it in relation to this, that kind of thing? And then they try to come up with like maybe a more reasonable explanation as to what you saw.
Nice.
Which I think helps because with fall migration, a lot of the warblers look kind of similar.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you're new to birding, it's hard to tell like what's supposed to be here and what's not. So I think that's really cool. It's a good way to interact, and it is a cool way to like track migration and like see where birds are because everyone's just posting.
Yeah, that helps with the birds that haven't been banded.
Mm-hmm. There's another app. I don't think this one's by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, but it's called Birdcast. Have you heard of Birdcast?
I haven't heard of Birdcast.
That one uses more like weather radar information.
Oh.
Because believe it or not, just like humans, birds don't like to be rained upon.
Oh.
So if birds can sense like a cold front or birds notice a drop in pressure, they'll try to avoid that, and therefore their migration path is a little taken off course. So birders use this data to know where birds are going to be. So if they want to camp out somewhere to check out like peregrine falcon migration or something like that, they'll know where to go.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah. Cape May, actually.
Oh, yeah?
Did you know Cape May is like one of the most world-renowned spots for migration birding?
No, I did not
I know.
that.
It's like super close to us. I did not know that either. The others are like Mexico, like somewhere in Mexico. But yeah, Cape May, local to us. Very cool.
Wow.
Apparently, like the largest concentration of peregrine falcons and merlins go by Cape May in October usually. So
well,
we should go check that out.
We gotta go.
We gotta go.
So badly want to see a peregrine falcon.
Mm-hmm. Apparently they're at John Hines. Haven't seen one yet.
Yeah, people say it. I don't believe them.
I'm sure they see them.
They're just red-tailed hawks.
This kind of reminds me of tracking like the solar eclipse that happened earlier this year, because me and my friends we were kind of going crazy like tracking the cloud cover to like because like obviously we knew where the path of the eclipse was going to be, but we wanted to get to a place where there's no cloud cover so we can actually see the thing. So that just reminded me of that. Do you have a cool solar eclipse story?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been able to make it to the path of totality ever, but both times I planned to go out, I got this like special material, like NASA paper, I think they called it.
Oh, yeah.
And I made a filter for my camera so I could point it directly at the sun and take some pictures. Both times I went out and clouds just rolled in instantly, and I was just kind of out of luck.
Mm-hmm.
I still got some good pictures, though. You can take pictures through the clouds a lot of times.
Yeah. I'll admit it that I did look at the sun when I wasn't supposed to.
Oh my god.
I thought I was actually screwed because my vision was a little blurry for a while. Yeah, don't do what I do. Don't do what I did.
Don't look at the sun.
Don't look at the sun.
Unless you have NASA paper.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, but with these new advancements in technology, we're also learning that migration evolution is still occurring. As early as the 1980s, barn swallows were seen breeding in Buenos Aires, Argentina, when they typically breed in the north. I mean, we see barn swallows all the time.
Barn swallows.
They typically go breed in the north, go south for the winter, and come back. Lately, the opposite has been seen since the 90s. It's only certain small populations of barn swallows, but now they're completely switched up. They're breeding in the south, migrating to the north for food, and breeding back in the south again. So it's really cool to see this like real-time evolution of these birds.
That's really cool. I didn't realize that birds would switch up their patterns like that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, it's not like willy-nilly. There's a lot of factors that go into it, which we'll go into. Don't necessarily want a downer section in each podcast every time, but I don't know, when it comes to birds and learning about them, conservation and stuff like that always comes into play, so there will be a little section about that, but I think it's important. Now let's talk about the extremes. Many birds have a short to medium distance migration, like within the continent, or they're over land the whole time. Some of these migrations, however, are like huge feats and very, very impressive. Sam, do you know the bird with the longest continuous migration?
E7?
Yeah, E7, great. Do you know what E7 is?
No idea. Let me think. I do, like, frigate birds and birds like that count? The birds that are just constantly flying?
They do count.
Okay. Then I'm going to say an albatross.
Not an albatross. I did come across frigate birds in my research though. E7 is a bar-tailed godwit.
Oh.
Little wader shorebird kind of thing.
A peep.
A peep kind of thing. Yeah, I'm sure. I feel like it's a little bigger than a peep. I don't know if it's technically classified as a peep, but it's that shape. It's a peep shape. How long do you think it traveled nonstop one flight?
Boy, longest continuous one. Well, if they migrate twice a year, which I don't know for sure they do. It's got to be less than half a year, right? I'll say 160 days.
I should have... I meant in miles.
Oh, in miles. Well, I feel foolish. What's 160 times, like... I'll say 1,600 miles.
The bar-tailed godwit actually travels from Alaska to Australia in one flight, 7,500 miles.
Oh my god.
I think it takes them like about a month.
Yeah, well, I hope.
Yeah, other birds stay in the air for longer. Common swifts have been shown to stay airborne for 10 months straight.
Yeah, they sleep when they fly, right?
They sleep, yeah. They like rise in altitude when they're about to go to sleep, and they just glide down as they're asleep.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. But they don't necessarily migrate over like a large span, right? The longest non-continuous migration is actually significantly longer. Can you think of the bird that does it?
Does it at any point stop in the United States?
It does not.
Okay. Then I'm going with albatross again.
It's actually the Arctic tern.
That's kind of close.
Yeah, the average Arctic tern, or the average migration for an Arctic tern, is around 40,000 miles a year.
Whoa. How big is the Earth?
And the longest recorded is 60,000. I'm not sure which this upcoming stat is in relation to, but the Arctic terns go like 2.5 times the circumference of the Earth during their migration.
Wild. Seems like they're overcomplicating it.
So it's actually pretty interesting. So they start in England, they go to the southern tip of South Africa, and then they go like somewhere in the Indian Ocean, and then they go to Antarctica, which is where they mainly feed.
Oh.
And then they go back up like off the coast of South Africa and back up to England. It's obviously a pretty irregular pattern. You would think like, oh, why don't they just go from South Africa to Antarctica? The irregular pattern is actually to capitalize on like the global airstreams and air currents. While it does take them like several thousand miles off the most direct route, they do end up preserving energy.
Oh, that makes sense.
Just because they're kind of like riding the current, riding the wind.
Airplanes do that too, right?
Mm-hmm. Arctic terns are also sometimes called canaries of the sea. alluding to
Oh,
canary in the coal mine.
yeah.
Because if something goes awry, whether it be in temperature, winds, storms like large hurricanes, it can really mess with their overall migration.
And then we see that they're not migrating regularly, and that lets us know something's up.
Exactly. So
Okay.
hence canary in the coal mine. Yeah, and another thing is ocean currents. Ocean currents are really important in like fish migration,
Yeah.
and where supplies of fish are going to be, where nutrients are going to be to provide resources for those fish. And as sea temperatures rise, these ocean currents become a lot weaker. You know the EAC from Finding Nemo?
Yeah.
So these currents are created from temperature differences and like heavy cold water. Yeah, so the temperature differences that are apparent in like surface water versus deep water, as these different columns of water circulate, they create these ocean currents which cycle so many nutrients from the bottom to the top and vice versa, and this is all propagated by temperature differences. So if the ocean becomes warmer and there's less of a temperature difference, these currents become a lot weaker, which affects nutrient cycling, which affects fish migration. All of this is interconnected because if there's not enough fish for these Arctic terns in Antarctica, it can be disastrous to their entire migration.
Right. They're not going to make that trip.
They're not going to make it. They're not going to be strong enough for the arduous trip back. Yeah, it just goes to show that there are a lot of factors that go into migration and like bird populations in general.
Yeah.
Going back, what do you think the fastest migration is?
Fastest in terms of
Average speed.
average speed. Ooh, okay. Well, let me list off a couple of things I know about bird speed. Peregrine falcons are the fastest bird when they're diving. I don't
True.
know if they migrate like that. Pigeons and doves actually go surprisingly fast. I know that for sure. I'm going to go with a pigeon.
Good guess. It's actually a great snipe.
Ooh.
Another waiting
little
peep,
peep.
kind of thing.
Peeps are everywhere.
They don't look aerodynamic, but they
No.
just are. Like the bar-tailed godwits flying 7,500 miles
Oh my
nonstop.
God, they look like flying baseballs.
Yeah, and the great snipe its migration is 4,200 miles at a 60 mile per hour average.
Wow.
So paint the picture here, right? You're driving from Philly to Phoenix, Arizona, and back
Oh,
at 60 miles an hour.
need at least 3 oil changes.
Yeah, but imagine you're just cruising 60 miles an hour, and every time you look out the window in that trip, there's a great snipe. just picture that.
Right next to me.
Right next
Wow.
to you, going that fast. That's crazy.
That's actually so fast.
Yeah, insanely fast for a bird that looks like that.
Yeah.
And, not to be a downer, I hope we don't need to do a sad section every episode, but honestly, there are a lot of birds that are being affected by climate change, and so the impacts of that and conservation efforts will probably keep coming up as topics in our episodes. But it is important stuff to know because the numbers here are just staggering. Each year, conservatively between 500 million and a billion birds die from running into buildings during migration, and light pollution is a big part of that. Lights, especially at night, they can attract and disorient birds, and we were talking about we were talking about the great snipe. They're super fast, and honestly the bar-tailed godwit, which it's mainly over the Pacific Ocean, so it doesn't really run into any houses. But that bird, I think its top speed is like 55 miles an hour. So these birds are going quite fast,
Right.
and they're hitting windows, buildings, and it's causing
Yeah.
at least 500 million deaths a year per migration, right?
Jeez.
Yeah, but some of these studies show that there are ways that we can prevent this. Yeah, one study showed that having the area of windows that are illuminated, specifically in Chicago, at a particular large convention center, led to 11 times less collisions.
Wow.
And just like everyday people dimming their lights during migration can reduce the number of collisions by up to 60%. Yeah, so I mean, like, obviously it's hard to coordinate as a concerted effort, but if law policymakers make it a thing just to like even reduce the intensity of light that some of these buildings are emitting, or like have like hours where they're less bright, it can be huge for conservation efforts.
Yeah. I mean, even until that happens, if you're listening and like you're really thinking, boy, I wish I could help, sometimes that feels a little overwhelming. Sounds like if we just all dim our lights a little bit every night, that can make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
So
especially people in more like rural areas where you're primarily going to be the only light source out, it can definitely play a huge role. And another thing, climate change exists. So as temperatures get warmer earlier in the year, that will trigger birds to return because they think, hey, it's time for me to get my resources.
Right.
But a lot of these changes don't happen at the same time, right? Like birds returning north earlier may not coincide with insects emerging earlier or certain plant species that they expect blooming earlier. So a lot of times these birds come back and things just aren't quote unquote ready for them.
Not enough food.
Which does confuse them and cause some issues. So yeah, and it's these little things that we don't think about that do definitely impact the lives of these birds and their populations.
Yeah.
Conservation efforts are focusing on what we call stopover habitats, which are particular habitats where large concentrations of birds stop during their longer migration. So, some birds have a continuous migration. Some birds specifically return to these stopover sites, and if these stopover sites are deforested or impacted in any way, these birds may not have the resources to continue their journey. They may, if they don't recognize that a stopover site is there, they may fly off course and therefore not know where to go. So going back to how we tag these birds, obviously helping us figure out where these stopover sites are, and that allows us to put our attention on those specific areas as major sites of conservation.
Great.
The main takeaway I have from doing this research is that these birds are just so impressive in so many more ways than I initially expected. When I was doing this research, I looked up the black-burnian warbler. Have you heard of a black-burnian warbler?
I've heard of it.
Do you know what it looks like?
Small and yellow, I'm guessing.
It's small, pretty like fiery orange on its like face and throat area, and it has like these black streaks. It's honestly a super cool looking bird.
Nice.
I saw one in upstate New York in Teganic Falls.
Shout out to Teganic Falls
Near Cornell. If you haven't, awesome place. You should go. I think it's a longer free fall, like a waterfall, than Niagara.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I saw the black-burnian warbler there this spring, and it's just I thought it was cool. I thought it looked cool. But now I just like have a deeper appreciation, I think, because that little bird that I saw makes a nonstop trip to Colombia every year, and then it comes back, right?
You might have just seen it like the one day it was there.
Yeah, the bird I saw there is probably in Colombia right now, or like on its way or something, right? Isn't that like so cool?
That's so cool. Well, I'm excited for fall migration. I'm actually going to take advantage this time, especially since I know what it is.
Yeah, we should go to Cape May.
Cape May.
Yeah.
Peregrine falcons.
Peregrine falcons, merlins. I haven't seen a merlin before.
No, only the app.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll keep you updated with anything cool that we see during fall migration.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
You keep us updated too. Send us emails. I want to hear about the cool birds you guys see.
Yeah, anonymous. If you're gonna get into birding now, let us know what you see.
Yeah, we're now here to the last section, our little bird quiz. We both have a bird call prepared and ready. Last time Keshav got it right immediately, and I got it wrong. It was a little bit embarrassing.
Say immediately.
It was a little bit embarrassing. So this time, Keshav's going to play it for me first.
All right, are you so ready?
I'm so ready. Oh boy.
I think it's a slightly different one.
I mean, that's a distinctive call.
It's pretty distinct.
It's one I should know.
We've heard it. It's in the same family of grosbeaks and buntings.
Wow. Okay. This is a northern parula.
Oh my god! I thought you had it. A northern cardinal.
No, of course it's a cardinal.
Oh, I got so excited when you said northern. Not a parula.
All right. Sam sucks ×2. That's the subject line for the email.
I always think these guys sound like pew pew laser beams in like sci-fi.
Yeah. I always say that when I'm thinking. I always say that when I'm talking about the cardinal. I choked. I'm choking at this game.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. You tried your best. You gave me a layup, and I bricked it. All right. This is one of my favorite bird calls of all time.
Mm.
To the very, very specific set of listeners who have been to the Denizen Pequot's Nature Center in Mystic, Connecticut, if you've gone to the Night in the Meadow exhibit, you'll know this one too.
Bruh. Initially, I'm thinking like owl type things, which kind of also leads me to mourning dove, but I don't think this is a mourning dove. Can you play it again?
Yep, I'll play a different one. It's going to sound similar, but a little different.
It sounds like a chicken. It sounds like a dog barking. Play it one more time.
One more time. Some people describe this as sounding like, who cooks for you? Who cooks for you?
That who cooks for you thing sounds very familiar.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what bird it's associated. Who cooks for you? It's sounding owly to me. I'm just going to say like great horned owl.
So close. Barred owl.
Oh, I almost guessed
Yep.
barred owl.
Barred owl. Great horned owls do sound very similar. It's one of my other
okay.
favorite calls.
Got
But
it.
hey, good try. That was a little unfair. We haven't like heard that.
No,
actively.
that's okay. That would have been my second guess. The
Yeah.
barred owl. Good one.
You'll never
Well,
forget
now I know
it
what they
again.
sound like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my
Who cooks
favorite
for
call.
you?
Who cooks for you?
Nice.
Incredible.
Great.
All right. Well, check that scoreboard. Still 1-0 as Kesh predicted. So let us know how you did at home. And thanks for listening to our podcast.
Yeah, let's try to get number 37.
37,
This week.
36 even.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Maybe pushing it, but sure.
Maybe pushing it. If you liked this podcast, send it to a friend. Let your family know. Give us 5 stars on whatever podcast service you're listening to. We should have our YouTube up and running, so if you're listening on YouTube, give it a like.
Mm-hmm. Probably will be the same as our Instagram at Birds Are Real Pod.
Yep. And we should have a TikTok up and running too. So check that out for some fire content.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and our email one more time is birdsarereal.pod@gmail.com.
Yep. Acceptable subject lines this time include Sam sucks times 2 or question for the pod. That was a little nicer. All right.
Yeah.
Keep it birdie, folks.
Wait, no, say something to end it.
Until next time, look at a bird.